Okay, so here we are for our Teams Essential Training. We're going to talk about why Teams is really a fantastic multi-tool for any modern working environment, and we'll give some honorable mentions to some of the other tools in the Microsoft Office 365 suite, which you're probably going to want to use alongside. But first, let's talk about this. Now, this is a family classic, and it's actually very relevant to Microsoft Teams, believe it or not. So, as you probably know, Marty McFly in the movie, he jumps back 30 years, and then at a certain point, he jumps 30 years into the future. Good special effects for the time, captivating story, and back in the day, this movie cost $19 million to make. Very impressive. However, did you know that you get to travel back in time 30 years and more on a daily basis without spending a cent? It's absolutely true. Let me explain why. And it's this: the technologies that you tend to use on a daily basis to work together with your colleagues are ancient. Email is from the 60s and 70s. Network file shares are from the 80s. That was a long time ago, people. And yet these are our absolute workhorses every day for sharing files with other people. But there must be a better way by now, right? Because we're living in the future already. Let's talk about what is the problem with email, because everybody loves email, but it does have some drawbacks. And we're going to go through that now. So let's just talk about some poor worker here called Contributor A. They are going to produce a document, but then of course they have to send it out for review and comments and other people. So they're going to send it over to Contributor B. But of course in real life, it's probably not just a one-to-one. They're probably going to have to send this file out to like 20 other people. Those people are going to make changes, produce a new version of the document, and send it back to poor Contributor A, who's got to manually go through all that feedback, merge those changes, produce a new copy of the document, and then, of course, send it out to everybody again. That was a lot of work. Not to mention now, everybody's mailboxes is getting full with lots of different versions of that file. And of course, poor Contributor A may get another round of review comments coming back, and it all starts again. Contributor A is obviously a little bit tired by this point, so they go off on vacation. Well deserved, I have to say. But wouldn't you believe it? Once Contributor A is out of touch is exactly when the boss comes over and says, hey, I need the latest copy of that document right now. It's absolutely business essential. We float or we sink. Contributor B looks through their inbox. They take their best guess, but there are an awful lot of different edits in their inbox, and they send the file that they think is the best candidate. Is it going to save the organization? We don't know. Fingers crossed, eh? Now, to solve this issue, we came up with the idea of network file shares, because network file shares have this idea that they can be a single source of the truth. Instead of emailing copies of files to each other repeatedly, we can just have a single place where everybody in our department comes along and works. So for example, you tend to have high-level folders based on your department, be it HR, finance, and sales, and there's no interconnection between those folders. So if I work in sales, that's where my content is, and I can't see finance, I can't see HR. The only game in town for organizing the vast amount of content that you very quickly have in this scenario is you can have complicated file names and you can have multiple subfolders just to try and bring some sort of semblance of order to the perhaps hundreds of thousands or even millions of documents that any organization ends up having here. So I create a new document. Let's say it's a sales forecast. I store it in the network file share so that me and my colleagues can reference this. But of course, when I'm not looking, one of my colleagues helpfully moves the document to the forecasts folder because I'd put it in the wrong place originally. So I'm going to come along, click on my last edited document in Word, and it's going to say, can't find that document. I'm going to fall back to searching within the file share, and it's going to bring me all sorts of crazy results, somewhat familiar to the file name I was looking at. But you know what? I'm in a world of hurt here. Not to mention there are a lot of other limitations. For example, if we want to keep a version history of this file, we've got to do that manually. I've got to be creating a document, renaming it V1, V2, V3, maybe dragging that into the versions folder, the archives folder, whatever else. If I want to work on this file with other people at the same time, well, pretty much I can't, because it's going to be locked for editing by that person. And we've all been in that situation where someone goes on vacation and then you open a document and it's locked for editing by the person who's just left for 2 weeks. So not so good. Then, of course, as an organization, we're going to have to make sure that this network file share is backed up appropriately. If you want to share content with finance or HR, or let's face it, someone outside of the organization, we're probably going to have to fall back to email, and we're making copies of the document again, and it's insecure because the file might be forwarded on to someone inappropriately. The search experience, not very good, as already mentioned. What are we to do? This is where we need to jump in the DeLorean and try and jump back to the future. These tools from the 60s and 70s, or 80s in the case of network file shares, they were good in their day. They were much better than copying files on floppy disks and having multiple copies even in a single office, but they do not meet the needs of the present. And this is where the new Microsoft Collaboration Suite comes in. Now, we will be mainly talking about Microsoft Teams because, for reasons I will outline, it really should be your go-to tool for modern collaboration. But we also have these other tools. I mean, there are many other tools in Microsoft Office 365, but we do have, for example, OneDrive. This is a logo for OneDrive. This is like your personal drive in the cloud, which allows you to do editing, allows you to do basic sharing with other people. Then we've got Microsoft Teams, the go-to tool, I would say. It's like a multi-tool. If you need to do collaboration on any given project or initiative, it's what you need to look at. And then we have the venerable old SharePoint, which has been around for over 20 years now. This gives you a lot of the features that you get in these other two tools, but you can do really fine-grained permission management and a bunch of other things. So for the really large-scale stuff, consider SharePoint. All of these cloud tools mentioning here, they have versioning built in by default. They allow you to work on content within your organization, but they also allow you to work on content with externals, but you're not emailing that content outside. You're using something called sharing links, and you're able to maintain a single source of the truth. You have a great security model over the top of this. It's all safe up there in the cloud. And like I say, you maintain a single source of the truth. When the boss says, give me the latest copy of that document, it's business essential. You know exactly where to go. You know exactly what to give them. And especially Teams and SharePoint, they can become the hub for multiple solutions because you bring in ways to navigate to all sorts of line of business systems, be it SAP, be it DocuSign, etc., etc. You don't have to have your people bookmarking all these crazy tools which they need to use to get their job done. You can actually curate all the resources that they need for a given project or initiative. But this is something we're going to look into a bit more soon. All right, so let's have a look at this Microsoft Teams tool, which I'm making such positive noises about. So here we are. This is Microsoft Teams. This is the app. It's installed on my machine. By the way, you can always go to myapps.microsoft.com and sign in with your Office 365 account. Sign into Teams that way, just in a browser. It doesn't need to be installed on your machine, and you can see the same experience. There's also a Microsoft Teams app, which you can install on your phone, which can bring the chat and the other things that we're going to see wherever you're going. Also, honorable mention, by the way, is the OneDrive app you can also install. So you have access to your cloud files on the go and you can scan documents and things like that. So if you're on the road and you have a taxi receipt, well, you can just scan it while you're there in the taxi and have it ready when you do your expense claims. But I digress. Let's have a look then at this tool. So over on the left here, we have the navigation bar. So here I can see Microsoft Teams, but I can see I have activity notifications. I have the ability to chat with my colleagues. I have a calendar, which is integrated with my calendar. And I have telephony both within my organization, and if it's been configured with a telephony provider, I can do telephony outside as well. And if I click on the ellipsis, that's what the 3 dots is called. In Teams, that always means see more options. And we won't have time to cover absolutely everything that Teams does because it's so fully featured. But just to say, yes, if I click on that one, there's even more apps which I could add to my Teams over in the navigation bar if I fancied, workflow, kind of cloud automation, or basic document approvals, or basic task management, shift management, etc., etc. You will never believe just quite how much is in it. Next is the favorites bar. Here I can see that I'm in several teams, which means it's not really team in the sense of organizational chart team. It's really any kind of project or initiative which I might need to work on. Anytime that I create a team, or anytime someone else adds me to a team, or sometimes there are public teams which you can just join, then it's going to show up in my favorites bar. And if I get too many in here and I don't visit them and things like that, then I may also get a section below saying kind of hidden ones. It will deprioritize the ones which I don't go to, although I still have access to them. It's just a favorites bar. Over the top here, I have search. If you're trying to find something, you'll be able to do a full text search on all your messages and files and everything that's stored in all the teams that you still have access to. You can create, well, let me say, if your organization has allowed this and it is the default, then you can join or create a new team at any time. If I click on that one, I can create a team. It can be from scratch. One thing I rather like is you can create a team based on an existing team. So if you have done a few projects and you've got this kind of structure in your team which you really like, and then you want to kind of roll that out again going forward for a new initiative, you can just use that other team as a template, click from this team and create a copy of it, but obviously without the content. There are a few kind of pre-made templates that Microsoft have rolled out here for project management, for help desks, for incident response, etc. But the one that I created for the example today was just from scratch, so I don't need to create another one. So here we are. This is the team that I created for today. Any team which you create, by default, it has a new channel called General. And in that General channel, you have a Posts tab, which is effectively like a social media wall, where you can post comments, you can post media, business media is what we mean. And then you have a Files tab, which allows you to see a summary of all files which have been uploaded to this channel. And by the way, you can have multiple channels, you can just add them, and that they also have posts and files tabs, and it basically allows you to stream different project conversations, like the logistics folks might have a channel, the legal people might have a channel, etc., all within the same project, which would be this team. So here we are. We have our posts tab. This is completely brand new team. Why don't we see about doing some work? So we're going to go along and we're going to click new conversation. And then we're going to, for an example, let's say we really need to work on a contract. It's urgent. So we're going to say, we need to complete the contract by close of play today. So I could come along and I could post this right now, but that wouldn't be the best, because if I post this, it's not really going to draw my colleagues' attention to it. I mean, which contract exactly? I mean, unless we've had lots of conversations, they're not really going to know. The other thing is, if we just go along to the ellipsis for the channel notifications, maybe they've turned their notifications off. So they may not even realize that I've posted something for several days. So if this is really urgent, I'm going to have to do a better job. So let's go along to the edit button here, and we're going to format this in a nicer way. So we're going to say urgent, complete contract, like this, which is a bit better, isn't it? And then let's say we want to draw some people in here. So I can start at mentioning people in the team. And that's great, because then when I post this, they are going to get a specific notification that they have been mentioned. And so it's going to draw their attention to this piece of work, which we're beginning to do. But even better, because maybe I've got like 30 people in the team and I don't want to name them all individually. So we're going to do @team. There we go. And that is going to be shorthand for just everybody in the team. By the way, you can also define your own tabs. Like we were saying before about you might have legal people, logistics people working on your project. So you can define your own tags. So then you could say @legal, @logistics, etc., and just do posts shouting out to specific interest groups within your team, which could be nice. This isn't still quite right though, is it? I mean, let's mark it as important. So it's going to be a bit more prominent. This is what we like. And then the other thing we can do, for example, is we could go in here and let's say we want to put in some more stuff. So we could put in a table like this, and we could say blue team is going to perform final draft. And then the red team will do the review. Lilac team will do the legal review. And then the M team, the managers, will send for DocuSign. Look at that. So now I've got people being mentioned, they're being drawn to this. I've got a clear agenda of what we're going to achieve. It's marked as important. Now the thing is, there's lots of other things you can do here. I mean, I could put some emojis in here to keep people, motivated. I can use GIFs if we so wish, if that meets the team standards. Maybe stickers, I quite like stickers. So we could put in a sticker here and we're going to add the caption. So we say, great team. Let's keep everyone motivated for this urgent work. We are the best. Whoa, hubris. Yeah, so we can do all that kind of thing. Notice I could embed, video and all sorts of good stuff here. But the one thing I haven't embedded here is the actual document. Now I could insert a hyperlink here to a document elsewhere, but really what I want to do here is just attach an existing document and upload it into Teams. Although we could have created the content in place in Teams already, but let's just pretend this is on my machine. So I'm going to attach from my machine, my contract. It's winging its way up to the cloud right now. That was the progress bar. Great. So it's there in the cloud. It's ready for us to work on. Let's post this and let's get on working with my colleagues. Okay, so fantastic. It is now there in the cloud. My colleagues have been notified. We're going to start working this together. If they come along, they're going to be able to click on the document. It's going to open in the Teams version of Word. Notice, yes, it's not really a contract, but you didn't think I was going to do a legal contract on the video, did you? Now we can start doing edits here, like so. And the thing is, anything I do, the version history is now being stored off in the background. I mean, I don't see it happening, but it is happening. So all my changes, there's a good record of the version history being saved there. Now, the thing is, if my colleagues were to come along and start editing this at the same time as me, they would be allowed to. And I'd start seeing some kind of logos here with their initials, and I'd be able to message them right here from within Word. I'd be able to see a cursor the different parts of the document where they were working. And this is called co-editing. We can work on the document at the same time as each other. It's not locked for editing by default. And this is especially useful on very large documents, as you can imagine. Now, this is very rare, but occasionally people have issues where they're editing like even the same paragraph as someone else, and then it gets confused and it's like, well, which piece of text do I take here? And then you're going to get a little dialogue and you can choose, it's going to be this one and not this one. There's no kind of blind overriding of your content here. So this is the version of Word up here in the cloud, so to speak. If I go along to conversation here, this is my, this is effectively a copy of the post that's on the posts tab. And I can actually say, you know, at Travis, make sure paragraph 5 is completed. And then I can post that one and that's all good. Let's come back to that one shortly. Okay, so this is great. Now I'm working in Teams and I have a slightly cut down editor experience here at the top because it's the web-based version of MS Word. Effectively, I can go at any time though. I can open in desktop app. We click on this one. It's opening it in my copy of Word. There it is. I can now have the very full toolbar here, so every single option, and I can continue editing, but this hasn't changed the fact that I'm still working on that file in the cloud. I still have my single source of the truth in the cloud. I haven't taken another copy, downloaded it to my machine, and now I'm going to somehow have to laboriously merge the changes up there. No, the good news is this is still that file in the cloud. We still have the single source of the truth. It's very, very important. I can't stress that enough. So there we go. We're going to do a few more text. Now notice the save button is a bit different. This is not saving to the cloud in real time. However, I have effectively like a merge to the cloud button here. So I'd save that one and that's fine. When I've completed my changes, job is a good one. I close that and then we'll continue here. And I'm going to still see the changes that I made even in my full fat version of Word just now. So this is all good stuff. Let's just close this and get back on a similar topic. Okay, notice that comment that I made when I was editing the document to Travis has been recorded with a timestamp and all that good stuff. What is this all about? Well, Teams is often described as a chat-based collaboration tool, and it ain't just because you can chat directly to people here. It also means this collaboration experience, which we have, because usually if I wanted Travis to make specific changes to the document, then I might pick up the phone, send an email, walk over to his desk and say, make sure this happens. Now, when it doesn't happen, Travis is going to say, well, I don't remember you walking over to my desk at all, sorry. If we're using chat-based collaboration like this, I have a full record of everything we agreed throughout the collaboration process. Plus, it saved me having to walk to the other side of the building to talk to Travis, right? So this can be a very nice way of working, but also do pick up the phone, do chat to people, have a coffee with people. That's all good too. So that, in essence, is the collaboration experience. Now, that co-editing that we saw in Microsoft Word, editing the document at the same time as others, that works for Word, it works for Excel, it works for PowerPoint, it works for OneNote. This is all good stuff. However, there's just one caveat. You remember how I opened Word in the full fat version of Word installed on my machine and I was still able to co-edit it? You can't do that with Excel. You can co-edit Excel, you can edit at the same time as someone else if you're using the browser version of Excel, as in all of you are, but as soon as someone opens it in the full fat Excel on their machine, it gets locked for editing because it's just too complicated for it to reliably do the syncing, and so it's not supported. So just bear that one in mind. I do occasionally get calls for people saying, hey, our Excel file is locked and, you know, unlock it. And the thing is, you can't unlock it. You've just got to wait. And then you say to everyone, who opened it in the full version of Excel? And they'll go, I didn't. Well, one of them is telling a porcupine, as we say. Okay, so let's go along to the Files tab here, and we notice that this is our file that we posted on the Posts tab. So this is indeed a summary of all the files which get posted to this channel. If there was another channel here, I wouldn't be seeing this file. This is channel specific. You see, it says general here. But yeah, sure, we're good. We have our document. I could open it again here. Some people ask me sometimes, well, I don't like opening it direct in Teams because then I have to I can only open one document at a time and I don't like it. And sometimes I want multiple documents open. Well, go along to the good old ellipsis here. You can open, and you can choose to open in Teams, which is the default right now, but you can also open it in a browser, which means you could actually open several and there'd all be tabs in a browser and you can easily flick between several instances. And just because it's in the browser, well, it's pretty much the same edit experience as edit in Teams. So you can work on multiple documents at once. Another thing you can do is open in the app, and you can change the default so that you're always opening an app if that is your preference. Notice as well, there's some other good stuff in here. I don't recommend this, but you could download a local copy of the file, but hey, let's keep that single source of the truth, okay? If this file was particularly important for the whole project, you could pin it to the top here so that it's always very visible. We can move the file to other places within Teams or SharePoint or wherever else. We can make a copy of the file if that's appropriate. And if we go to more, notice we can actually check out the file. So we effectively lock it out for editing, and then we check it back in again when we're finished. So it doesn't have to be co-editing, if you see what I mean. And you can also integrate other apps in here. So, you know, electronic signing like DocuSign options might appear here if you added them to your team, that sort of thing. So this is all good stuff. But you will notice that one thing that is missing here is the version history. And I promised you a version history. So how do we get to that one? Well, it's kind of a long story, but they haven't quite built it into the Teams interface yet. And this is where we have to delve down the rabbit hole, because if I go along to the ellipsis here, actually let's untick that one. If I go along to the tab here, I can see this option in Files, Open in SharePoint, which is very curious because I thought we were talking about Microsoft Teams. Let's click on this one and it opens up a SharePoint which seems to be named, this site seems to be named after the team which I'm in. And it turns out that basically when they created Microsoft Teams, there was all this existing functionality in SharePoint in terms of versioning, you know, co-editing, et cetera, et cetera. And they were like, why reinvent the wheel? And so they built Microsoft Teams effectively on top of SharePoint. So when you have a Teams, you effectively have a secret SharePoint underneath, which is just there to hold the documents. And notice if I click on the ellipsis here, it's much richer, and I do indeed have version history, and I can set alerts to say if someone deletes my file, tell me, and lots of other good stuff as well. But I am going to say, just one word of caution, this is not a real SharePoint site per se. I mean, it's a Teams site. It's very much connected to this team, and the permissions possibilities within this SharePoint are very locked down. If you want a bit more freedom with permissions management, which is one of the cases where SharePoint wins out over Teams because Teams has been deliberately built to have simple permissions management, then you might want to create a SharePoint site specifically and maybe just link across to it with a tab from Teams. But anyway, let's have a look here. So we're going to go into version history and we're going to see what version history it saved. And sure enough, we can see that all the major edits that I did within my document it's been saving it as a version in the back end here. So this means that I don't have to be having files v1, v2, v3 before. Now, if I decide that version 3 was bunk and really version 2 should be the source of the truth that people see when they click on it in Teams, I could always come along here and I can click on restore, and then a version 4 would be created identical to version 2, which is good. The other thing I can do is actually click on this link here. It's going to open it up in Word, and this is version 2. It knows that this is not that same version, and I can actually do a comparison between this version and the latest version. So it will actually show me side by side what changed. So I can see this text was added in the last version compared to that prior version here. So this is all good stuff, I think. I mean, this could save you a lot of work. But let's close this for now. So that's version history, and I do think it's very useful. Another honorable mention when you delve down to SharePoint here is this is where the recycle bin is. There's nothing in there right now because we haven't recycled anything. But if you do delete something by accident, you can come down to the recycle bin and you can get it restored back into Teams down here. So this is a useful thing to know. Usually it's in the recycle bin for 30 days. And then if you've got kind of admin rights, you can see it in the second stage admin bin for recycle bin even for 63 days, I think it is. And then, your organization may have other retention policies and you can get it back for even longer if that's what your organization has decided on. But yeah, so this is a brief segue into SharePoint. SharePoint's not really the topic for today, but I thought you would get something out of this. And so we're back to Teams. And wasn't it good? So yeah, we uploaded this content, but the thing is we didn't have to upload content. I mean, you can upload files, 1 file at a time, 10 files at a time. You can upload folders of content, and that works reasonably well up to about 200 items. After that, in my experience, it starts with a little bit of trouble. Maybe talk to your IT folks if you want to do some sort of big migration up to Teams, because you probably want to flatten out your folder structure. Yes, folders are allowed here. But the thing is, if you have those deep folder structures like the ones that you have in network file shares, that's not going to work very well in the cloud. Because the thing is, we have something called the URL length limit. Basically, the address in a browser address bar can only go up to a certain size. And if you have a lot of long folder names, long file names, deep nested folders, etc., don't forget, this stuff is all cloud-based, i.e., web-based. URLs are important with this stuff. If you exceed that limit, you're going to start running into limitations here where it says, it can't do certain things. So anyway, long story short, yes, a few folders to organize your content in the cloud is probably reasonable. Just don't do all the deep stuff that you would have done on a network file share. Keep it shallow. Keep it broad, maximum 1 or 2 subfolders deep, okay? One of the things that you can do in the cloud, you see, and it's rather beyond the scope of today, because this is just an introduction, but you can now add extra descriptive columns within Teams. And this was always a thing for SharePoint, by the way. So let's say that this contract, I wanted to give it a status, so I could add a choice field and say that this contract is being drafted, in review, and finalized or something like that, and just effectively drive a manual workflow with this metadata here. Or I could add some columns which aided, search and that sort of thing. So descriptive metadata, and you can have several columns here, by the way, and then you can sort and filter by them. It can be very nice to find your stuff. Descriptive metadata is the way to go in the cloud, more than lots of folders. But like I say, yes, you can have some folders, and you can come along and you can indeed create Office material in place. So I can have my other doc here, and I can create it in place. So this is cloud born, as they say. And then I can just put a little bit of content in here. Oh, except it has to be equals. Well, this is going well, isn't it? demo effect. There we go. And this gets saved and it's all good stuff again. There it is in the cloud. So I have my content here. So how does that sound? Pretty good. And that was just the document part. We haven't even got to the rest yet. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about managing our team. So we can go along here. We can click on the ellipsis. We can say manage team. By the way, there is a few other things you could do. I mean, if you're the admin for the team, you could delete the team. Probably don't want to do that too often, right? You can leave a team. So say someone has added you to an initiative and you really don't think it's any of your business and you keep getting notifications for it. You can leave a team. The team remains there, but you just don't have access to it anymore, and its content is not going to show up in search, but that's fine. But for now, let's just go to manage team. We can see that I am the owner. That's effectively the admin, and that's my default position because I created this team. I just have one member right now, Travis. Now, best practice as far as I'm concerned, because this is a private team, a so-called private team, and that means that any new people joining the team need my approval. If I go on vacation, there will be probably 50 requests for people to join the team almost as soon as I hit the beach. So I can always go along to my other team members and I can promote them very easily to be owners. And then let's say 2 or 3 owners is probably good practice if you're doing active work in this sort of thing. And this just means that you're not overly hassled here. Now, notice Travis, he was just added as another member of the team. He's a member. That means Travis can see and edit everything in the team. So everything in the team, there's no concept of read only in Microsoft Teams. He can just edit everything. Okay, but we're going to go along. We're going to add another member, and this time I'm going to add someone who's not even in my organization. John at test.com is going to be a guest. So we're going to add John. He gets sent a invitation, which is all good stuff. And so this has been sent up. There we go. And like I say, because it knows that this person has to accept the invitation, they haven't been added instantly. They're going to have to click on their side and say, yes, I accept that invitation. And then they'll be able to have a guest log into this Teams. So guests are going to have different rights to Travis, aren't they? No, believe it or not, I mean, pretty much a guest is just going to be able to see and edit everything in the team. So obviously, beware. You probably have a greater trust level for people like Travis who are in your own organization, but it's very valuable to be able to work with external organizations. I mean, I think that's one of the game changers with this. You're able to work on, contracts and whatever else with externals without duplicating the content and emailing it around the world. So this is absolutely fantastic, right? But the thing is, you may have some kind of trust issues. So that's something that we're going to have to deal with. And by the way, if you ever want to kick anyone out of the team, you can also easily do that by just clicking on the X and then you just remove them. But let's leave poor Travis here for now on. I leave you to explore the other stuff that you can do here. People can request access and you can say yay or nay. You have various settings that you can even set a team photo, that morale thing we were talking about. This is good stuff. You can send out a team code. So in this sense, you could actually send out a code and say anyone who needs to be in my team can use this code to join, which is just a different way than explicitly inviting people by name. Maybe if it's a bit more open than that, you just create a code. So that can be quite nice. We can also just remove it again. What else? We have analytics. I mean, this is a very new team, so there's not going to be too much in the way of analytics. But if this is an active team, notice you've got a Power BI-like dashboard giving you some clues on the engagement and the active users, the channels which aren't really used, etc., etc. So this also can be quite nice. And you can also define tags. Those are those tags I was telling about, at legal, at logistics, etc. You can do that here. So yes, you are going to be managing your team as an owner. The other thing that we might want to do, as mentioned before, on any major project, general might not cut it. I mean, it's all very well for a small initiative where we just have a general channel and we're all talking together on the stuff that we want to do. But for any sort of larger initiative, we're going to want to have different conversations around logistics, around legal, around technology, etc., etc. And this is where we want to click on the good old ellipsis and add a channel. So we're going to create a channel here for logistics. And we're just going to create that one. And what we're going to see is logistics gets created, and it's just the same crazy stuff that it was in general, as in we have a posts tab, we have a files tab. Notice the contract is not in here because it's a different channel. And what this allows then is the logistics folks can have logisticy conversations here, and we can just maybe have the general tab for, introduction to the project, the high level templates, that sort of thing. But the logistics and everybody else, they can have their own channel, so the conversations don't have to get all mixed up. But my guest, John, when he joins, he is going to be able to see all the logistics stuff as well as the general stuff. But then again, I'm going to have some contractual material which I don't want John to see. Maybe I have some material which is about John's organization. I mean, it's part of this project, but I don't want John to see it. He is external to my organization. So for that one, I'm going to come along, I'm going to add a channel, and this is going to be my org only, for example. And this time, we're going to choose a different kind of channel called private. Notice as well, there's another one called shared. That's where you share a channel across organizations and you need your IT people to set up various trusts and things. But we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about private channels. So we click on a private channel, we create that one. The channel gets created. You can add extra people. Let's add good old Travis to this. He's such a good developer. There we go. So Travis has now got access. We can actually make him an owner of the private channel. So he is going to be able to add and remove people for the private channel. And there we go. So now we notice the lock icon next to the private channel. My guest, John, is not going to be able to see this content. I have a posts tab, I have a files tab, I can create more tabs, but this is just for my org. Me and Travis are going to organize the ownership of this one. And actually, it's entirely capable, even though I'm the owner of the team, I can kick myself out of this private channel and not be an owner of it. And, it could be like management only, within your own organization. So it can be truly confidential. You can set it up that way. Even though you're the owner, you don't see this content. So this, once again, can be pretty useful. Only thing to note, and we haven't really talked about tabs yet, is certain tabs can't be added in a private channel, like Planner, which is a thing for basic project management. But anyway, yes, this is why we might add channels, streaming our conversations, and also it's the only kind of rudimentary permissions management that stops, say, my guests being able to see and edit absolutely everything in the team, because in this case, they can't even see that there's a private channel here. If John was to come along, he would see general and logistics. He wouldn't see this with the padlock. He wouldn't even know it was there. So if we come along to our original channel here, the thing that we haven't spoken about is tabs. And I also think this is just incredibly useful. So if we come along here, we can add a tab by clicking on the plus, and notice what we can do. I mean, it's just incredible. Because we have all these kind of standard apps which we would often use in the Microsoft sphere, and we can just add them as a tab there to the top of our team. So say we've got a separate SharePoint site which is of use to the project, we can link to it from here. SharePoint pages, SharePoint sites, document libraries. We can add a whiteboard. So this is going to allow us to play around with ideas just here on a tab within our team. So this is, project or initiative related ideas. We can just kind of doodle in here. There we go. So we can add notes and things like that. I don't know. Yes. Anyway, this isn't the point of this presentation. Let's forget about whiteboard. Yeah, so we can do basic task management here. We can add, this is part of the normal subscription for Office 365 as well. We can add forms, which allows you to do surveys and quizzes, both within and without your organization. We can create completely custom lists. They could be to-do lists, inventories, you name it. We can go out to external websites. Maybe we need to link to the industry gazette. If we don't have like an SAP connector, we could even use this to point to our SAP instance within the organization. We can do Power BI dashboards related to our project or not, and just embed them in there as a tab. You see what I mean? It's very rich, but it goes further because then you've got this kind of marketplace where you've got all these other crazy apps as well, which you can then add to your team. But beware. Yeah, okay, so there's a severe risk of shadow IT here, because if someone goes along and they click on Asana and you don't use Asana in your organization, for example, then you're effectively introducing apps. Now you may want to talk to your IT administrators. They can actually cut down the number of apps which show in here, because it probably isn't a good idea to make absolutely available everything to everybody, because nobody's then going to have the standard tools. They're going to be using all sorts of crazy stuff. So do be aware of that. That's a governance issue. But generally speaking, yeah, tabs are incredibly important. Why? Because I can add lots of tabs here along the top, and I can effectively curate all the resources that people need to get access to for, let's say, the logistics part. I can add, the building plans and everything else along here. They're not having to put bookmarks in their browser to try and achieve some kind of semblance of a workspace. You can actually curate it for them by using tabs. So don't forget about tabs. They're actually very useful. The other thing we can do is we can kick off a meeting straight away, be it audio or video, right here from within one of the channels. And this kind of brings us on to the next stuff, which is, well, telephony. So of course we can do telephony from our teams. Your organization, they can wire your organizational's teams into a telephony trunk. Not really my area, this one. And then you can actually make calls out to landlines and that sort of thing from here. You can always call other people within your organization. It can be video or it can just be voice. Then we have the ability to chat. So we can chat with other people one-to-one. Then we can have chat. So we can go in here. We can find folks within our organization. And we can chat to them, so we can say, how did that contract edit go, etc. And we can just chat one-to-one. We can chat one-to-many. We can actually add extra people to the chat. So we're saying, oh, let's bring Alan in, let's bring John in. We can just click here. We can add them into the chat. We can add up to 250 people, actually, which I think is kind of overkill for a chat. You've got all the same kind of edit things that you had in the other, in the posts tabs. You can do rich formatting and put GIFs and all that good stuff. I can just change this and just turn it into a call instead. I can share my screen, so I can show Travis exactly what's happening on my screen. And I can go along to the organizational tab and I can see who Travis works for. And then I can go out there and, I could even pop down the thing for his manager and start chatting with him too. It's actually very, very impressive. Notice I can just IM people from here and everything. It's really, really good. So if I didn't really know who Travis was, I can reach out to his manager and just get permission that we work on something in particular. And so chat is something that you're probably going to be using daily. And then we said about the activity feed. I don't think that's particularly useful to cover. Let's talk about calendar. So calendar, this one is blank because I'm not really using it. But yeah, sure enough, I can integrate this with my main Outlook calendar, and I can make meetings here that I can invite other people in. And when they join, it can be video meeting, it can be voice meeting, etc. And something which is pretty amazing is, rather than just a standard meeting, you actually have these things now called webinars, which even comes with a sign-up form and all this good stuff. I'm not going to do the whole thing here. Notice here, require registration, and you can actually say, yes, everyone needs to register. And then you can get them to fill out a form and come to a webinar, which is getting broadcast from Teams. And it's not quite the same as a full-on meeting because it's slightly more biased towards broadcast than interaction, although some interaction is possible. And you're then able to stream this to a lot of people, like thousands of people potentially. So this is actually really good. And then if you're working in a larger organization, you would have another option for meetings called live events. And they do say that you can then stream to 10,000 people. And if you work with Microsoft in advance, you can even stream to 100,000 people. And that's all here in Teams. I mean, you may know that one of the killer features of Zoom, for example, has been to be able to have large meetings. But yeah, I mean, that has worked into Teams now. Now, Teams has also got some other features. If you're doing online training, which I sometimes do, you may want breakout rooms and things like that. Those are also possible here within Teams. So you can then split your classes into subgroups for discussions and that sort of thing. But actually, this is the end of our presentation for today. I hope you've got a lot out of it. Do please feel free to post any questions in the comments and I will get back to you, and see you next time. Thank you very much.